The voice to Parliament divides Australians into Indigenous and non-Indigenous. Now, essentially, in my opinion, that's a racist proposal. But let's just draw the connection to 1967 here. Isn't that what we did in 1967? We created an ability for the federal parliament to pass laws that were specific to one race of Australians. Isn't that racist too?
It is, and indeed, before they hit on the idea of the voice, there was a strong move to repeal Placetum 26, but then to institute another section in the Constitution which would give the Commonwealth the same power. So there was a strong move to repeal Section 26, believe it or not. So it was Placetum 26, and this was foolish, because this is the section which entitled the Commonwealth to make laws with respect to the Aboriginal people. So they put in another provision, another section, which would be very confusing. They abandoned all that in favour of the voice.
Okay, so around the same time as the 67 referendum was the emergence of the land rights movement. Now, and the federal government responded, you know, by granting land rights, which eventually led to, or sort of acknowledging land rights, which led to Mabo and so on. Now, why, in your opinion, is the land rights movement a flawed concept, David?
Well, it is flawed because when this case, the Mabo case, eventually came to the High Court, the argument, the case was concerning people in the Torres Strait who were agriculturalists. They had a farm plot, they grew crops on that particular plot. That was the plot that they understood to be theirs, and the case was a dispute as to whether that ownership should be recognised. What the High Court did in a case of incredible virtue signalling, the High Court decided that they would apply that to the whole of the Commonwealth. They would apply that to parts of the Commonwealth where the Aboriginal people had been nomadic, and whatever ownership they had related to the areas they moved around in, which they regarded as the areas where they were entitled to move. Now, to give title there was not in the case before the High Court, and that was one of the serious mistakes. It should have been just left to the states to determine, but this gave the Commonwealth the power to introduce native title legislation, which has had great difficulties.
Like everything Canberra does, they make a mess of it.
Particularly when they move outside of the powers which were intended particularly for Canberra. And remember, the principal reason, the thing that really drove federation, Sir Henry Parkes made this point, and that is the defence of the Commonwealth. They knew that the colonies, the 6 colonies, self-governing, could not by themselves defend themselves. They needed a strong British presence. But they knew that Australia could best do this by being united and having a single defence command. And that is what the Commonwealth, that is the principal purpose of the Commonwealth. And what have they done? They've left us at this stage virtually defenceless.
And now we have people like Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price pleading with the federal government to do something practical, and all they come up with is the voice.
And they've retreated in those areas where there was some progress being made. That is the control of drink, for example, in the Territory.